The sky above Outpost Black Ridge was a muted gray, the kind that blurred the line between dawn and dusk. Snow fell in slow spirals, covering the jagged remnants of what had once been a bustling human settlement. Now, it was a desolate expanse, marked by the skeletal remains of buildings and the occasional flicker of alien patrol lights. Sergeant Elias Rourke stood atop a crumbling watchtower, his eyes scanning the horizon through a pair of battered binoculars. The cold bit at his exposed skin, but he remained still, a statue amidst the ruins. His breath formed ephemeral clouds, quickly dissipating into the frigid air. Behind him, the remnants of his unit huddled around a makeshift heater, their faces gaunt and eyes hollow. The war had taken its toll, not just in numbers but in spirit. Each soldier bore the weight of loss, their camaraderie forged in the crucible of shared trauma. The Karzul had descended upon Earth with a ferocity unmatched in human history. Towering, insectoid beings with chitinous armor and eyes that glowed with malevolent intelligence, they had swept across continents, leaving devastation in their wake. Their technology was advanced, their tactics ruthless. Humanity's defenses crumbled before them, cities reduced to ash, populations decimated. Elias lowered his binoculars, his gaze settling on a distant flicker of movement. A Karzul patrol, their forms barely discernible against the snow-covered landscape. He noted their formation, the deliberate spacing, the synchronized movements. They were searching, always searching. He descended the tower, his boots crunching against the snow. As he approached his unit, the soldiers straightened, their conversation ceasing. Elias nodded, acknowledging their silent vigilance. Patrol approaching from the east, standard formation, likely reconnaissance, he reported. Corporal Dana Kim, the unit's communications specialist, adjusted her equipment, tuning into the frequencies used by the Karzul. Static filled the air, interspersed with guttural clicks and hisses. She frowned, her brow furrowing. "They're coordinating with another unit, possibly setting up a perimeter," she said. Elias considered this, his mind racing through potential scenarios. The Karzul were methodical, their strategies precise. If they were establishing a perimeter, it meant they suspected human presence. But how? "We need to relocate," he decided. "Gather your gear. We move in 10. The soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, their movements silent, purposeful. They had learned the value of stealth, the importance of leaving no trace. In this war, visibility meant death. As they prepared to move, a low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Elias looked up, his eyes narrowing. A Karzul drone hovered above, its sensors scanning the area. He signaled for his unit to take cover, pressing himself against the cold earth. The drone passed overhead, its lights casting eerie shadows across the snow. Moments later, it vanished into the distance, the hum fading into silence. Elias exhaled slowly, his breath misting in the air. They had been lucky. This time. They moved under the cover of darkness, navigating the treacherous terrain with caution. Every step was measured, every sound scrutinized. The landscape was a labyrinth of destruction, the remnants of civilization serving as both obstacle and shelter. Hours passed, the cold seeping into their bones. They reached a dilapidated structure, its walls partially collapsed, offering minimal protection. Elias signaled for a halt, his eyes scanning the surroundings. "We'll rest here," he said. 2-hour rotations. Stay alert. Shy editor. +1. Spines. +1. The soldiers settled in, their bodies weary but minds alert. Sleep was a luxury, one they could ill afford. Elias remained awake, his thoughts drifting to the past. He remembered the early days of the invasion, the disbelief, the chaos. He remembered the faces of those he had lost, their voices now echoes in his memory. A sudden noise jolted him from his reverie. A faint rustling, followed by a low growl. He reached for his weapon, scanning the darkness. A figure emerged, cloaked in shadows, its form indistinct. "Identify yourself," Elias demanded, his voice steady. The figure stepped forward, revealing a human face, gaunt and weathered. The man raised his hands, showing he was unarmed. "Name's Marcus," he said. I was part of the resistance cell in Sector 12. Elias studied him, noting the tattered uniform, the haunted eyes. He nodded, lowering his weapon. You're a long way from Sector 12, he remarked. The cell was compromised. I barely escaped. I've been moving ever since. Elias gestured for him to sit, offering a ration pack. Marcus accepted it gratefully, tearing into the food with desperation. Any intel on Karzul movements? Elias inquired. Marcus nodded, swallowing a mouthful. They're consolidating forces, setting up command centers in major cities. But there's something else. Rumors of a new human unit, one that's been hitting them hard. They call them ghosts. Elias raised an eyebrow. Ghosts? Yeah. No one sees them coming. They strike without warning, leave no trace. The Karzul are spooked. They're increasing patrols, deploying more drones. But it's not helping. Elias leaned back, processing this information. A new unit operating with such efficiency could be the turning point they desperately needed. The following morning, the unit resumed their journey, Marcus now among them. They moved with renewed purpose, the prospect of resistance invigorating their spirits. As they navigated the ruins, they came across the aftermath of a skirmish. Karzul bodies lay scattered, their forms twisted and broken. There were no signs of human casualties, no footprints, no shell casings. Just the eerie silence of death. Elias crouched beside one of the corpses, examining the wounds. Precise, lethal strikes. Whoever had done this was highly trained. Ghosts, Marcus whispered. Elias nodded, his mind racing. If they could make contact with this unit, coordinate efforts, they might stand a chance. That night, as they set up camp, Elias sat alone, staring into the flickering flames. The weight of leadership pressed heavily upon him, the burden of responsibility ever present. But amidst the despair, a spark of hope ignited. The war was far from over, but perhaps, just perhaps, they had found a way to fight back. In the distance, the howling wind carried with it the promise of change. The snow had begun to fall again by the time Elias Rourke spotted the dropship descending from the smoky sky. Its sleek matte-black frame barely reflected light, blending into the storm-heavy clouds above. He stood with his arms folded against the bitter wind, watching it settle with a mechanical hiss onto the ridge. Behind him, Black Ridge's makeshift outpost sat in eerie silence. The few soldiers awake huddled around dimmed power cells, their gaunt eyes squinting at the unfamiliar silhouette of the incoming transport. The ship's hatch opened with a pneumatic gasp, and from it emerged a single figure. Compact, upright, with posture too rigid for field fatigue. She wore a matte bodysuit overlaid with modular armor, low profile, no insignias, nothing that identified rank or affiliation. Only her eyes, sharp and unreadable, met Elias's with anything resembling human recognition. "Captain Lynn Voss," she said, walking directly to him. "You're Sergeant Rourke." He didn't extend a hand. "Orders didn't say I was babysitting intelligence." "I'm not here for babysitting," she replied flatly, brushing snow from her shoulder. "I'm here to investigate your ghosts." Her voice cut through the cold like a blade. Elias motioned toward a dim structure, leading her past burnt-out shell casings and broken support beams that once held the line. Inside, warmth greeted them in haphazard flickers from a salvaged heating core. The men straightened upon seeing the stranger. Lynn's eyes darted over them, registering each face, each wearied posture. Without wasting time, she unhooked the black case from her back and placed it on the comms desk. "We've intercepted 5 Karzul distress signals in the last 48 hours, she began, unlocking the case. "All from squads sent into these sectors. None returned." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Happens all the time." "Not like this," she replied. The screen flickered to life, and a low-resolution recording stuttered into view, Karzul footage, translated and stabilized by human AI. The video showed a patrol unit sweeping through a dilapidated human structure, weapons humming. For 30 seconds, nothing occurred. Then, without sound or signal, a member vanished from the frame, simply gone. The others turned, confused. A heartbeat later, another. The final moments were chaos. Weapons firing into empty space, screams of pain not matched by visual threats, until the feed went static. Their sensors caught nothing, Lin said. No heat, no EM disruption, no movement outside of Karzul themselves. Elias leaned in. They were taken. They were erased, Lin corrected. By Project Spectre. The name sat heavy in the room. Most soldiers had heard whispers, rumors exchanged over encrypted channels or between hushed conversations at dying campfires. But the official name had never been confirmed. Now, Elias understood why they'd been assigned here. This wasn't just a reconnaissance mission. It was an interface. Why now? Elias asked. Why here? Because your region has shown the highest rate of alien force withdrawal, she said. Despite no registered human firepower, no detected air raids, and no guerrilla conflict signatures. Someone's been operating in complete silence. She clicked the screen again. A topographical map flared up, red markers across the valley where Karzul movements had spiked, then disappeared. At each site, sensor data abruptly flatlined. Every time, the same radius. 20 meters. As if the Earth itself had consumed them. You're not here to investigate, Elias said quietly. You're here to confirm. Lin didn't deny it. Instead, she stepped closer, her voice barely audible. They're not a unit. They're a protocol. No names. No tags. They deploy, execute, and vanish. Only High Clearance Command is aware of them. Then why loop me in? Elias asked. Because they want you to see what they do next. The statement made no sense. Elias's experience in the field told him ghost units didn't announce themselves. But before he could press further, Kim's voice came through over the comms. Unregistered signal ping. Northwest. Motion flagged. No heat signature. 30 clicks. Elias and Lin locked eyes. She nodded. They're here. The journey to the flagged zone took 3 hours of near-silent travel through snow-laden canyons and frost-bitten forest. Lin barely spoke, keeping to Elias's side as he led the way with instinct born of years crawling through battlefields. Every tree looked like a grave marker. Every breeze felt too still. When they reached the site, the carnage was unlike anything Elias had seen. Karzul armor, ripped, not burned. Weapons still gripped in twitching clawed hands. No human weapons had been fired, no blasts, no shrapnel. Whatever had happened was done by hands. Precise. Surgical. Where are the bodies? Lin muttered, stepping through the wreckage. The command cores are still intact. Elias crouched beside a collapsed alien corpse. Its central nerve stem had been punctured, clean, almost ritualistic. Psychological warfare, he said. They want the others to find this. A sound. Barely perceptible. A crunch of snow under weight too light for armor. Elias stood quickly, rifle sweeping in a controlled arc. Lin froze, scanning the area with a small triangular device that pulsed with soft green light. There was nothing. Then the wind shifted, and for the briefest moment, Elias saw it. Something move where nothing should have been. A ripple, like heat over asphalt. Then gone. They're watching, Lin said. We're clear to proceed. To what? Spectre contact. Lin led them to an abandoned comms tower 3 clicks east. Inside, the air was thick with decay, age, and silence. As they entered, every device on Lin's data slate went dark. Then, a voice. Filtered, distorted, metallic yet human. Elias Rourke. Welcome. From the shadows emerged a shape, not walked in, but materialized. A man in near-invisible armor that shimmered like liquid shadow, face masked, hands empty. Another followed, and another. 4 in total, each barely distinguishable from the darkness itself. Lin stepped forward. This is the handler. Elias felt their gazes, though he saw no eyes. One of them stepped closer, lifting a hand in a gesture of non-hostility. The suit deformed, shifting to reveal part of a human face. Scarred, hollow-cheeked, one eye cybernetically enhanced. Name's not important, he said. But we fought in Vanta. Rourke, right? 22nd Marine Recon. Elias nodded slowly. Vanta had been a slaughterhouse. Anyone who walked away from it did so with ghosts in their bones. We've been operating under Protocol Spectre for 6 months, the man continued. Eliminating high-priority Karzul nests, command relays, bio-harvest sites. With no detection, no recovery. How? Elias asked. You're invisible? The Spectre stepped back, gesturing to the suit. Adaptive concealment, thermal damping, EM nullification, sonic suppression. Next-gen materials. But more than the suit, it's the method. We leave no sign, no emotion, no communication. We become the quiet between beats. You're using fear. We're using truth, the man said. The Karzul are apex predators. Until they're made prey. That's what we do. We invert the pyramid. Lin spoke again, stepping to the center. The command believes we're close to a tipping point. The Karzul have begun rerouting forces away from Earth. You've broken their morale. They're not breaking, the Spectre corrected. They're adapting. We need to escalate. What kind of escalation? Elias asked. Phase Ember. Total regional sterilization of Karzul presence. In conjunction with your unit. The words hit Elias with weight. They didn't just want his cooperation, they wanted his integration. You're asking us to become like you. No, the Spectre said. We're asking you to survive. The decision came over firelight that night. Elias sat with Lin and his squad beneath the fractured remnants of a concrete overpass, the air thick with tension and unspoken doubt. We're not ghosts, Kim said quietly. Elias looked at her. Not yet. He didn't sleep that night. His thoughts returned to the corpses, the perfect silence, the cold gaze of the specters. But beneath it all pulsed something deeper. Not dread. Not even fear. Possibility. When dawn broke, the specters were gone. Not a print. Not a trace. But in the place where they'd stood, left in the snow, was a single mark. A handprint. Human. And beside it, carved in old Earth script. You are not alone. The aftermath of the last assault left Black Ridge a hollow echo of its former self. The once steady thrum of human resistance had been reduced to a fractured heartbeat amid ruins and smoldering ash. Under a brooding sky smeared with smoke and the cold bite of impending night, Elias Rourke surveyed the desolation with a weight pressing deep into his chest. The snow had melted in places where fires had burned unchecked, leaving patches of exposed earth mottled with dark stains that spoke of violence and loss. Broken weapons, shattered armor plates, and fragments of once proud flags littered the battlefield like relics of a forgotten war. The Karzul's recent counteroffensive had been relentless and precise, erasing entire squads in moments before disappearing into the shadows they commanded. Elias knelt beside the crumpled body of Corporal Mendoza, a grim tableau of twisted metal and blood. The man's face was peaceful in death, but the jagged wounds across his torso betrayed the brutal reality. No enemy had left a mark on his armor. No blast, no slash, only the cold hand of an unseen force. Elias's jaw clenched. This was no ordinary fight. Behind him, the surviving soldiers moved like ghosts themselves, their eyes glazed but burning with a stubborn will to endure. Among them, Dana Kim meticulously scanned the perimeter with her portable sensor array, her fingers nimble despite the chill. Multiple energy fluctuations, she reported quietly. Unregistered signatures. Low heat. Could be Spectre units. Meaning, they're still out there, operating under the radar. Elias exhaled a breath that fogged in the frigid air. Then they're not just a myth. Not anymore, Kim confirmed. From the distance came the low, mechanical hum of Karzul dropships returning to orbit, the ominous reminder that this battlefield was temporary, a snapshot in a long, grueling war. Elias turned toward the ravaged command post, where Lynn Voss waited, her expression unreadable beneath the hood of her camouflage cloak. We can't hold this position, she said without preamble. Karzul reinforcements will be here within hours. We need to fall back and regroup. Elias nodded. Our mission was to gather intel on the Spectres. We have it. But the question now is, how do we survive what's coming next? Lin's gaze flicked toward the distant horizon. By becoming what we fear. By embracing the darkness and learning to vanish within it. Elias's mind raced. The battlefield was no longer a place of open combat but a chessboard of silence and shadows. The Spectres had shown them a new path, but walking it meant shedding old identities, old ways of fighting. Prepare the squad for extraction, he ordered. But first, we search for survivors. Every life counts. They moved through the shattered landscape with a cautious urgency. The cold gnawed at their limbs, but the coldest threat was the invisible enemy lurking beyond sensor reach. At every broken building and ruined shelter, Elias's team called out in hushed tones, the sound swallowed by the vast emptiness. Suddenly, Kim's voice cracked over the comms. Contact. Movement. Multiple. Non-human signatures. 30 meters east. Elias raised his rifle instinctively, heart pounding. The shadows seemed to breathe as the enemy approached, their forms shifting between solid and spectral. The Karzul advanced with mechanical precision, but their confidence was shaken. The scars left by the Spectres had become psychological wounds. A fierce skirmish erupted, gunfire shattered the silence, the staccato rhythm of rifles mingling with alien shrieks. But the human soldiers fought differently now. They moved with a new kind of stealth, using shadows as allies, disappearing and reappearing with tactical surprise that unnerved their foes. Elias found himself at the center of the maelstrom, his body a conduit for adrenaline and resolve. Each breath was a calculated effort, each shot a testament to survival. Around him, comrades fell, but others took their place, driven by the raw will to live and to fight. When the battle finally subsided, the ground was littered with fallen on both sides. The Karzul retreated into the darkness, their formation broken and morale shaken. The human survivors regrouped, breathing heavily, their faces smeared with grime and determination. Lin approached Elias, her voice low. They won't stop. This is only the beginning of their counterattack. Elias nodded, feeling the heavy mantle of command settle over him. Then we'll need to be ready. Not just to survive, but to strike back harder. That night, under a sky smeared with stars, Elias convened a council among the remaining leaders. The old tactics were dead. They had to embrace the spectral warfare the Spectres embodied, silent, invisible, deadly. As dawn approached, Elias looked over the scarred battlefield one last time. It was a graveyard, yes, but also a crucible. From its ashes, a new kind of resistance would rise, one forged in shadows and sharpened by resolve. And the war for Earth was far from over. The first silence was the most unsettling, a void heavier than the absence of sound, a pause pregnant with uncertainty that stretched across the battered remnants of Black Ridge. The battlefield, once a cacophony of war cries, gunfire, and alien roars, had fallen into an unnatural stillness that set every nerve on edge. No wind stirred the charred branches, no distant rumble heralded another assault. Only the faint hiss of melting ice whispered of a world waiting, breath held. Elias Rourke stood amid the ruins, eyes scanning the horizon where the Karzul forces had vanished. Their sudden retreat was as perplexing as it was suspicious. It was as if the battlefield itself exhaled after the storm, only to brace for what lay beyond. Around him, the remnants of his squad moved with cautious deliberation, each soldier a shadow among shadows. Lynn Voss knelt beside a fractured comm terminal, her fingers dancing over the interface with practiced ease. The data they had gleaned was incomplete but vital. Encrypted transmissions hinted at a Karzul withdrawal that was strategic, not defeatist. "This silence isn't peace," Lynn murmured, eyes never leaving the screen. "It's a lull. They're regrouping, rearming, preparing for something bigger." Elias nodded, the weight of command pressing heavier with each passing moment. "Then we need to be ready. Not just with weapons, but with minds sharpened and spirits unyielding." Kim approached, her expression taut yet resolute. "The Spectres' adaptive camouflage is evolving. They're integrating with our squads, training soldiers to move unseen, unheard. The battlefield is changing." "Good," Elias said. Because we need every advantage. If they want silence, we'll give them a storm they can't forget. Night fell swiftly, blanketing the encampment in cold and shadow. Around the flickering fires, the soldiers spoke in hushed tones, shared stories, fears, hopes. The bonds forged in fire and loss held steady, a fragile defiance against the encroaching darkness. Elias found a moment alone beside the smoldering embers. His thoughts drifted to the ghosts of those lost, the specters who had shown them a new path, and the road yet to be traveled. The silence pressed close, but within it, a spark of determination ignited. Dawn broke with a sky painted in bruised purples and fiery golds. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of frozen earth and distant rain. As the squad assembled, Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. The battlefield was no longer a place of despair but of rebirth, a proving ground where humanity's resilience would be tested and forged anew. Orders came swiftly. Recon teams moved out with spectral precision, blending seamlessly into the terrain. Communications hummed with encrypted chatter, a symphony of coordination and stealth. The Karzul had taught them that silence could kill. Now, humanity would wield it as a weapon. Days turned to weeks, and the tides of war shifted in ways few could have anticipated. Skirmishes erupted suddenly, then vanished without trace. Entire enemy squads were dismantled before they knew what had struck. The Spectre techniques became standard, their lessons etched into every soldier's reflex. Yet, the silence remained, the silent promise of conflict unresolved, of shadows yet to be chased. Elias stood at the forefront of this new warfare, a commander shaped by loss and tempered by hope. One evening, as the sun dipped below the jagged skyline, Lynn approached with news that rippled through their ranks. "We've intercepted a Karzul directive," she said, voice steady but grave. "They're consolidating forces for a final push. The war will end soon, one way or another." Elias's gaze hardened. "Then we'll be waiting." The silence deepened, but within it, the heartbeat of resistance pulsed strong. The battlefield, once a graveyard of broken dreams, had become a crucible of survival and defiance. And as night swallowed the world, humanity prepared to rise from the shadows, unseen, unyielding, unstoppable. Silence had fallen, but it was far from the end. It was the calm before the storm.